Well, good day there, everybody. This is Joe Van Cleve. Happy Martin Luther King Day. Today I'm going to do a little experiment with Lumen photography. And sometimes when we make these videos, we actually do the experiment ahead of time and then we shoot the video as if we were just starting it. But this time, I'm truly going to do something. I don't know if it's going to work. So stay tuned. Let's see if it does work. So one of the things that's been challenging about the Lumen print process is that when you get the resulting negative out of the camera, the colors I typically see are purples, sometimes pinks, kind of bluish purple to pink. But then when you reverse those tones in post-production in a Photoshop-like software to get a positive image, the colors also reverse to the opposite side of what you might call the color wheel, the complementary color. And the resulting images mostly become like bluish green colored. And so I'm interested in tailoring the color of the negative to try to get the resulting positive image to be in the color spectrum that I'd like. Now, ideally, I'd like to have prints that are sort of brownish colored. But I don't really know exactly how to do that because brown is not a primary color. It's not a single spectrum color, let's put it that way. I'm going to shoot for something like the yellowish end of the spectrum, sort of a sepia color in the final positive image. And so the opposite side of that is more bluish purple. So what I need to do is figure out how to tint or tone the paper negative to be bluish, purplish colored beforehand. And then there's one consideration I have to keep in mind, which is if I tint the paper negative before I put it in the camera, is that going to affect the exposure? Well, in the case of blue colors, if it allows the ultraviolet light from the sun to pass through the coloring onto the emulsion, it'll be fine. If it blocks the ultraviolet light, then we're going to have a problem. It won't expose the paper very well. So this is all highly experimental. I don't know what I'm going to get. I don't know what the results will be. But what I got is my wife has a little box of food coloring. So this is a Betty Crocker food coloring stuff, and there is a blue color in there. So I'm going to try and do a food coloring dyeing of a paper negative. And so this has blue, green, yellow, and red food colored tubes in here. So I'm going to be using my homemade Lumen camera as I drop the view screen, and I'm going to use the standard 5x7 size film back, the flat film back. I'm not going to use the curved film plane for this experiment, so I'm just going to use 5x7 size image. I'm going to dye or tint the paper negative. I have a little plastic little tub that'll fit 5x7 paper. So I'm going to put some water in the bottom of this, maybe a half inch or so, a centimeter or so of water, enough to immerse the paper negative. I'm going to put some food coloring in it, tint it the color that I think I need, and then put the paper in there and stick the camera out in the sun and try to get an image. We'll see what happens. All right, a little bit blue here, and we'll have to get some green then. Yay. Well, that was pretty good. This stuff is obviously used. All right, let's see what we get here. There's some floaters in here. This was obviously a used set of food coloring tubes. It's more greenish than blue. I might need to add a little bit more blue to it. Well, we have what looks pretty close to a bluish green color. There's only a few floaters left in there. I think there's enough liquid level to get a 5x7 fully immersed. So I'm going to take this out to the dark room and get a 5x7 paper soaked in this, and then we'll load it up in the camera. My camera's already set up outside, so we'll see what happens. Okay, so I'm out in the dark room, and so there's a lot of unknowns about this. First of all, this is food coloring. I don't know the pH of it. So the pH of it might affect the way the paper auto-develops. I don't really know if the bluish-green dye will affect the ability of the UV light to get to the emulsion and make the lumen exposure. And I don't really know how much the paper is actually going to be tinted by the food coloring by immersing in it. I might need a lot stronger dyeing than what I have here in my solution, but I'm going to take a piece of 5x7 paper anyways, and I'm going to go ahead and stick it in the tub here and let it soak for a while, and then dry the back of it and stick it in the camera and see what I got. Okay, so to transport the wet negative from the darkroom to the camera that's situated out back, I'm going to have to figure out a makeshift way of not exposing the paper too much to bright light. And so what I have here is I have this lid to a homemade pinhole camera that is made of foam core and tape, and it's kind of like 1.5 inches deep. And so I put the wet negative in here. I had a paper towel, actually a piece of paper towel, then put the wet negative face up in here. Then I put the lid of the camera, the plywood lid, which if you can imagine like that, covering it, and then I was able to walk it out from the darkroom to the backyard and load it into the camera. And there is the camera, and it's kind of pointed up at this wooden trellis and the bright wall and the tree up there, and hopefully I got some of those tree branches in focus. So there it is, and I'm going to give it about half an hour at least, as much as I can, probably about a half an hour. Well, let's go out here, and it's been a little over a half an hour. Let's see what we got here. It's going to be kind of tricky doing this. And stick this in here. Just grab it and stick it inside the lid and carry it inside real quick. We'll look at it in the garage. So it's been about 35 minutes, face down. Let's see, flip it over. Ooh, wow. That's very interesting. Not bad for 35 minutes. Okay, I'm going to stick it in the envelope. Actually, I think I have to dry it in the darkroom and get the old heat gun and dry it. All right, these two negatives, let's compare them. They're both the same paper. They're both Ilford multigrade warm tone resin coated paper. The one on the left was exposed for 33 minutes in the curved film plane version of the camera, and it was pre-wetted with water. The one on the right was exposed in the flat film plane version of the camera, and of course it was pre-wetted in the bluish green colored food dye solution with water. And as you can see, they have remarkably different tones, both almost the same exposure, 33 minutes versus 35 minutes. Same paper, same camera, same lens. So it's not the bluish green tone I was hoping for. It came out to be different, in fact. And so I'm going to have to digitize these and see what results. Well, I was very surprised at the outcome of the digitized and inverted picture. It's blue-green. It is almost the same color as the food-colored water that we had started with, which kind of surprised me, but there's a lot of mysteries to this process that I'm still discovering or unfolding. So the negative, as you saw earlier, was sort of orangish, kind of red colored, which is not what the food coloring was. So obviously there was something either directly chemical or pH related or something that caused the paper negative to turn orangish colored with blue-green food coloring. And once that was inverted into a positive, again, it's blue-green to start with. So a lot of mysteries in this process that'll be fun to work with in the future. If I'm looking for kind of a brown tone final image, it would be kind of fun to try to maybe stain the negative with coffee or something. I don't want to, however, develop it. I don't want something that'll cause it to develop, because the Lumen process overexposes the paper so dramatically that if you have any kind of developer in it, it'll probably just cause it to fog and go really dark, I would assume, or maybe not, we don't know. So I could try something brownish in tone, maybe coffee, maybe black tea or something in the future to see if there's any difference. When I soaked the negative in the little tray of blue-green dyed water in the darkroom, it wasn't very blue-green. It was because the paper is plastic coated, it's resin coated paper, so it had just a very slight tint. And if you notice on the top of the image, it's a little more bluish and more greenish on the bottom of the image, and of course the negative's upside down in the camera, so I'm assuming some of the liquid ran down the negative as it was sitting there in the camera. So there's more liquid on the bottom than on the top of the negative. Anyways, more experimentation with the Lumen process, more mysteries to unfold. I'm going to be trying in the future to be using different kinds of liquids on the paper to see what effect it might have. Well, I hope this has been of use and value to you guys. If it's interesting to you guys, I would advise you to go grab an old box camera of some kind or make your own, as I did with a simple lens, and see what you can do with some black and white photo paper. Well, until next time, this is Joe Van Cleve, and you have yourselves a great day.